Okay, hello. So, as you can see on the screen, it's just said welcome to Trespasser, and today we're having a quick look at Jurassic Park Trespasser, a first-person game that came out in 1998. It was supposed to revolutionize gaming, and it was very, very ambitious, and it made a lot of promises to be one of the greatest games of all time, and it certainly wasn't that. It was actually a huge flop upon release, but it does a lot of really interesting things, and it does a lot of things that are still quite rare in gaming today. So we start off as Anne. It's a female character, which is still fairly rare, to be honest, in the first-person games. So we are Anne, and we've just survived a plane crash, and we've landed on this island, and we have nothing but ourselves, really. So there are a few things that I want to introduce in terms of the game's originality, and then we can start to figure out how these impact the story of the game, the narrative that develops, and the way that we immerse ourselves in that story. So the first thing, one of the first sort of revolutions of this game, is the control of the arm and the hand. So rather than running over objects to pick them up, the player has to actually physically pick them up with their hand. So they've got full control of the arm. Now, I was reading that originally you were supposed to have control of both arms. Obviously most humans have two arms, but it was just too difficult to program into the game, so you've only got one arm. And I guess we could imagine that the left arm was broken or crushed in the crash. It's not too ridiculous to think that, but anyway, you've got control of one arm, which, to be fair, is more than you get in most games, where you don't really have control of your limbs as such. Which leads me to one of the other features of the game, and that is the sense of your character's body and how you, as the player, embody the character. So we know that we're a female. So the first cutscene introduces this. We are called Anne. Interestingly, the cutscene is completely in the first person, which is very important. I think it's the way that the player is always given the sense that they are experiencing this world through the eyes of the character, which I think is really interesting. But we also know that it's a female, because when we look down, hey, there we go. So it's a little bit obvious and a bit perverse, I guess. But in saying that, I guess if you are a woman, that's maybe what you do see. But more importantly, it's giving a sense of your body, which, to my knowledge, no other first-person game had done in 1998. And it would still be a couple of years until games would show you your feet when you look down, for example. So I know that Halo does this. When you look down, you get to see your feet. So this was all very revolutionary and very important to give you a sense of embodying this character. So effectively what we have, as we move the mouse left to right and up and down, we get a sense that we are moving just the head of the character, so that when we turn completely to the left, our whole body turns, which I think is really, really interesting. And it means that movement is a little bit clunky, moving left and right, because our whole body has to move. But what this does is it reinforces this idea that we are just an ordinary human being who just happened to have crashed on this island. We're not a superhero, we're not a sort of combat troop or a master chief who can pull off all kinds of crazy acrobatic shenanigans. We're just an ordinary human being, burdened in a way with this body, this kind of awkward body, which is kind of interesting, especially because of the nature of this game. It was supposed to be a survival horror, but it sort of turned more into an action game, but there's still survival elements to it. And the sense of frailty and that sense of your own body and bodily endangerment is actually really crucial to the way that this game works and the way that the story develops. Because the story, as it is fairly thin. You crash land, you're on Site B, or Jurassic Park, and that's kind of it. You just have to survive. But just from that kind of framework, a whole lot of other story moments occur, or narrative moments occur, where you have to survive a number of encounters with dinosaurs. And that sense of frailty and endangerment is really key to that. The other thing that the game introduced was a sense of physics, and even though the physics engine is a little bit shoddy, a bit broken, it was still, for its time, quite advanced. So if I walk into this steel beam, it clunks to the ground with a sense of weight, and I'll demonstrate how you interact with this world. So I put my arm out and I right click to grab the object, and when I try and pull it, it has a real sense of weight. And if I try and throw it, I can't, it's too heavy. So objects in the world have a sense of weight to them, which is pretty revolutionary for this game. And what that does, it means that when you try and interact with the world,
foundation maybe,
you have a real sense of again, of weight of your own body and your own bodily limitations. There are certain things that you can't lift, can't pick up, which is kind of cool. So we'll just explore a little further. So the game again was praised for having quite an open world. It could render quite a lot of objects. So obviously it looks hideous now, but for the time it was required a very powerful PC to pull off, and it was quite a spectacle. And what all of this is doing is giving us a sense of the world that we inhabit, or that we've sort of fallen into, and our position and our physical connection to that world. So there are a few ways, really three ways, that academics often explain the way that the player engages with the character in a game. So the first is that the character or the avatar is just a cursor. So basically just a crosshair or a mouse or an icon that you move through space. It doesn't really matter what that object is. It could be a block, it could be a woman or a man, it could be an octopus with 8 legs. All that you're really controlling is just
must be one of the offshore islands.
this cursor through space, which is not really the case here because we've got a sense of our body, right? Which brings us to the second explanation, which is the kinesthetic connection, so that my hand controlling the mouse and the keys creates a kinesthetic link, sense of touch, sense of weight and movement to this character, which is something that this game really encourages and really pushes, because I have to control the mouse quite deliberately in order to control the character's arms. So there's a real sense that my own arm is connected to this arm.
8 shots, heavier than I thought.
Actually, so just quickly, I forgot to mention there's no
Keep it steady.
heads-up display. There's no there are no numbers saying how many bullets this gun has or where the crosshair is. Again, stressing the sense of realism, but also of vulnerability. I never know how many bullets are in this gun. And also my health is this tattoo to the left there, which is a bit of a weird thing to do, but stressing realism in a way. I can only carry 2 guns at a time.
8 shots.
Which brings us to the third way that we explain the way the player interacts with the character or an avatar, and that's the sense of embodiment, right? We could call that the phenomenological experience, where I feel like I really am this character,
8 left.
which is something else that this game is trying to stress
Phone line or radio.
by having so much attention paid to the body. So I now have a sense of being this character, Anne, because I can kind of engage with the way that her body has physical weight to it, physical properties to it. And all of this comes together to help us engage with
Engine. Some kind of... Wait.
the basic narrative of this game.
International Genetic Technologies. That was the company from the dinosaur trial. After the trial, that old guy, John Hammond, wrote a book. He said it was somewhere in Central
So she's
America.
just discovered,
My
or
name
is just
is
discovering
John
that
Parker Hammond.
she's in Jurassic
I
Park.
was born on March 14th, 1928.
Oh no. Oh God. This is John Hammond's Lost World.
Okay. So there's a sense of narrative progression as I move through. Again, it's fairly linear. I have to sort of move through this track and I discover more about the island and more about the ways I can get off it alive.
There must have been something in the memoir.
A Nobel Prize or
Okay, so we get these
empire
rather
somewhere in a darkened room, in a dirty, derelict
invasive
somewhere in the
sound bites. Like, where's that supposed to come from? The game is encouraging realism. So this is, I mean, the game's not perfect. It's got a lot of faults, and that's something that I think is a particular fault or flaw, is that there's no reason for those voiceovers to exist. Everything else the game is doing is stressing realism, stressing a sense of embodiment that we are in the space. Obviously, voiceovers don't happen in real life. Now, here's a bit of a conundrum. I really want this gun, but I don't know how am I going to get that gun? So here's the physics engine coming into play. Oops, need that.
8 left.
Let's see if this works.
So that's what that feels like.
Awesome. So I wonder
8
if I can
shots.
awkwardly jump over there. So this is the way the game encourages you to feel like a survivor in a way.
10 shots.
Oh great, now I've got a beefier gun. Okay, so it encourages a bit of exploration, which is cool, but look how awkwardly she's carrying this. Obviously you don't shoot rifles with one arm or one hand. So before we log up, I just want to show you a dinosaur, because that is another thing about this game what I think is really incredible about it. We feel immersed in this environment. We have a sense of exploration, sense of physics, sense of realism, sense of embodiment, and then we get a sense of discovery, which comes now as we see our first dinosaurs in the game. And this is sort of the equivalent of that moment in the... Here we go. The music is a cue to make us aware that this is a very special moment. So it's a shame that extra diegetic cue exists, because that sense of wonder is there in the game
only true Jurassic
by itself.
Now that is an incredible smell.
Okay. And I was reading that the dinosaurs are all of their animations are AI driven, so there are no
In May the rains came.
there are no sort of
The son of the jungle was a ruler.
pre-written animations for these dinosaurs. They just have their AI and they have skeletons built within them, and that sort of drives their movement, which causes awkward moments like this one where this dinosaur is stuck, it seems, and this one doesn't quite know what he's doing. The AI was all supposed to make this feel like a really immersive, intense experience. And I remember playing this in 1998. I played the demo and I loved it.
Probably out drinking
It really
right
engaged
now.
me, and it sort of
And?
captured my imagination.
And who?
So even though it is incredibly flawed, I think it still does a lot, achieves a lot that other games haven't really tried to pull off. Now here's our first encounter with the dinosaur. Let's see if I can...
9, 8, 7, 6.
So you saw how intense that was, trying to aim and hit that dinosaur, which is something really awesome that this game achieves. And it makes every encounter with the dinosaur feel like a life and death encounter. Like I could have easily just died just then.
In a darkened room in an empty building.
And there's another dinosaur coming up. Let's see if I can get him as well.
The flashpoint, the origin of Jurassic Park. A forest this wild, this unknown, has not been seen by any human since the great hunters.
So we're
of the
getting
earth
introduced to
died.
this world slowly, and the sort of the elements of it, the dinosaurs, the ones that are harmless. The Brachiosauruses, I guess they were, and then the Velociraptors, which are our kind of enemies in the game. We get a sense of our vulnerability. And let's see if I can get past this one. Now, where is she? Okay.
That's it.
Oh.
6 left.
So the dinosaur has its own AI. It's decided to run away.
4, 3.
Ah, got it. No, it's still alive. You can see it's injured though. It's doing a weird little dance. Its legs are going a bit funny.
2.
Got it. So that's just an introduction to Trespasser. It's a game that did a lot of really interesting things, but got a lot of things kind of wrong by trying to experiment. But the reason I put so much detail into this video is that I want you to consider some things worth considering are the ways that your character moves through the world that you've created, and also how you control the character. Do you control individual limbs? Do they move quite freely, or are they clunky and awkward? Is there a sense of vulnerability? Is that important to your game? How about the physics? Do the physics suit the kind of game that you're making? This is important to consider because for Trespasser it all kind of made sense. The reason why your character was so clunky and awkward to control was because you were supposed to feel vulnerable. You're supposed to feel like you had to survive. So think about this. Think about how you control your character and how that character fits within the world, and how that suits the story you're trying to tell, and the way that your player is supposed to immerse themselves in the world. And hopefully Trespasser can inspire you the way that it inspired me as a child. Thank you for watching.